Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fourth Brain podcast. I'm Somil.
And I'm Ali. Today we're going to talk about Klarna and Salesforce and who's right. There's been a debate for last month around the topic that Klarna has announced two financial times. I'm quoting their CEO now. We just shut down Salesforce. Within a few weeks, we will shut down Workday. We're shutting down a lot of our SaaS providers as we are able to consolidate. This created quite a lot of buzz in the community. Klarna claiming that they want to go from 5,000 people to 2,000 people in their operations. And it became so big that the Salesforce CEO, Marc Benioff, had to answer this during the Dreamforce event and basically said he hasn't said where he's managing this data, how is he managing and sharing this information, how is he achieving compliance and governance of his company, what is his institutional memory, and so on. So why do you think a company like Klarna would do this?
I think it's very interesting what they have announced and the timing of this announcement. If you try to overlay this with Gen AI and the conversation around agents and agentic models that we have been seeing now, talked about a lot. I think there are many drivers. First of all, I think, of course, is a cost and efficiency factor because the amount of investments that some of these platforms take in the sheer update, the maintenance, the implementations, and the continuous changes that are to be made. I think that's quite a bit, and not to forget the license fee. So there is definitely an angle of cost and efficiency that you could potentially create. Again, I'm without getting into the Klarna specific approach. Of course, there are potential where you can technically create some of these cost efficiencies. I think the second one is this, something that we have heard from many different business leaders, is they want to have a closed loop operations. That means they want a way to get the feedback from the operations and then feed it back into training their processes and making the processes smarter, making the processes learn from mistakes and errors and make it more adaptive. And I think a third driver could be that for a company like Klarna, what are their core capabilities, and how do these systems and applications, how do they enable that? And then there's a question about how integrated Salesforce or Workday is in Klarna's core operations, or have there been challenges there or not? This is how I see some of the challenges. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is very simple. Going back to what you said, the most important thing is what are their core capabilities? How can they build around that rather than following what the SaaS software tells them to do? And
Yeah.
how do you really build that? And how do you build things around intelligence into the operation without having to buy really expensive solutions? So we see a
Yeah.
lot of companies aspire to do so as well, right?
Yes. And I think it's also a question on how many have the capability to build such a fully bespoke solution and build an interconnected platform. Because if you look at the digital transformation initiatives, most companies, they are around creating these new capabilities. They have been from the beginning around either being able to move to a different business models, or to move towards a better customer experience, or to build more agility, to build more visibility, to have more compliance. I think a lot of companies have been aspiring to do that when it came to digital transformation. And I believe, also something that we also discussed in the last episode, is ERPs are like this really big pieces of furniture in the room that you can't move, and you really have to build things around it. And sometimes that doesn't work so well. Sometimes you have challenges because, of course, I mean, if you continue with that, it's always some trash under those sofa, the bed that no one wants to pick up, lift up, and see. So you start creating a lot of things, beautiful things around it, but then you realize that these applications, these systems, they contain a lot of the intellectual property. And I really like the phrase that Salesforce used, the institutional memory. it still remains in some of these applications, and that it becomes very, very difficult to really move away from this. So one thing is capability, and I think not a lot of companies have the courage to make such an announcement today.
Exactly. Maybe because not that many companies are planning for an IPO as well. But I actually relate to your furniture analogy because I literally sit across a giant, very expensive sofa that we don't like anymore, but we can't be bothered to get rid of either because it's way too big, way too cumbersome to move. So I see that point. What I'm thinking about is also like how would the company does that, and I think in the past these ERPs, these systems in general have been the focus of attention. Their companies were forced to build around those, were forced to operate around those. But as you move to having many of these big giant monoliths of Salesforce, ERPs, different kinds of systems, then building a very complicated data fabric on top is actually more expensive than just decomposing these, carving out specific capabilities, moving them to specific microservices that are easy to manage, easy to deal with. And if you do that, you can also make sure that the flow of data becomes the primary focus. The flow of data into your operations, in your optimizations, in your what you do becomes the primary focus. And being able to really do things in much more agile manner, a lot more cost efficient, because you just do what you need to do and you don't need the whole giant application to deal with everything. Yes, institutional memory is important, but institutional memory should live in your system, in your data, not in specific applications that you bought from specific vendors. That creates a lot of problems for big companies as they basically continue to grow. And then if I expand on the furniture analogy, it's not just a piece of sofa that you bought. That sofa just continuously makes babies, right? And then you get like it grows and grows and grows, and then you basically run out of room in your house. You don't have time to do anything.
Yeah, because of course you buy your table, your coffee table, your settee, your drapes, everything matching with the sofa, and then you're like, okay, if I throw out the sofa, then I need to change everything. Do I really want that? Really quickly escalates into major renovation.
Exactly, and it becomes like a year long, and then you just basically become a procrastinator, going back to what you said, companies not having the courage to announce that they're going to do this and take that like surgical knife into to their systems. But if you think in a decomposable way, if you start with your operation and data flows and start building things around that, you don't need a giant transformation to make things happen, to go to that model, to become more adaptable. You just need to think of a microservices model and start carving and decomposing things one at a time, focusing what the core capabilities and core operations are. Then you can actually start seeing the benefits very quickly without having to do big transformation projects. And the benefit of all of that is that in the future, when you decide and you realize you actually want to do this differently, then it's just basically one small thing on one tiny chair that you need to move to have a different layout of your house to keep up with the furniture analogy, instead of just, okay, what are we doing with this giant sofa? And I think that's the way to go. With that said, Somil, how do you think BizOps comes to this picture, and why do we think that basically what Klarna is trying to do is building their own version of BizOps inside their company?
Yeah. So I think if we one things that I kind of derive from this is many companies have assumed or taken the planning system for granted. So we are so deep in the planning mindset in that we don't really think. I think what Klarna is doing is they're going back to the first principles and really questioning the need for whether do we need this. Because if you just kind of turn the stone, lift the stone and look under, they probably have realized that what they're interested in is data. because it's a data that it's a flow of the data between different versions, or basically different aspects of your function of your business. That's really important. And if you think really about the value streams, the lean value streams, it was always been about the flow of information. The systems compartmentalize that flow. So I think if you look at from a BizOps perspective, as long as there is so from BizOps perspective, instead of trying to connect different systems together and try to have like a botchwork of integrations and data transformation, I think this is simply complicating the problem in the traditional way of working. A BizOps approach could be, okay, here's my data flow that is uninterrupted, that is free flowing. How can I just deploy services on top of it? How can I enable functionalities? Because what I want from a functional perspective are very, very simple things. So if I could just look at, okay, what data do I need and what is it that I want to know? I want to do payroll. I want to know the opportunities that I've had. I want to know who are the customers who I've reached out to. What do they want? I want to know what my products and services are. And if I have good database of this, and if I have good data infrastructure about that, then building functionality becomes a slightly easier job. I think that could be their philosophy. And from a BizOps perspective, then you see, okay, how can we package? How do I package the data? How do I package the intelligence? How do I package the decisions, the decision models and frameworks? And how do I package the workflows? And then deploy them on this data fabric that already exists, so that all my different functions, all my different processes and functionalities, they are basically kind of taking it from the single pool. So back in the day, there was a lot of discussion and debate around having the single source of truth. And the companies, the way they try to look at it was, okay, I have ERPs, I have PLMs, I have the system. Which one is the single source of truth? How do we work with that? How do we get this to our warehouse and to our lake and things like this? And Klarna says, you know what? Just stop it. This is truth. I have this data here about my customers, everything that we know. This is the source of truth. Now, how do I use that in a most efficient way? Not looking at basically all the bureaucracy around it, but what I want to look at, okay, what is my next best action? What do I want people to do? And what are the guardrails around it? It is that simple. And then drawing that functionality, it becomes very, very easy. And I think now we have AI capabilities that are so advanced that you can very easily do it. And let's not forget the agents here. Because I strongly believe that when you have that kind of a data foundation already, and when you have these microservices already, I'm pretty sure Klarna would be thinking about deploying agent-based solutions where you can just get things done without building all the bureaucracy, but without building all those different things. And to answer Salesforce's question about what happens compliance and governance, well, when you design your microservices and agents, basically when you work in the BizOps, that is guaranteed, or that's enabled from the platform. It's federated governance, it's federated compliance. So you already have all those things that comes from the system that it tells you. So the actions that you take, whether it's a person or a bot, the actions that they take, that the set of possible actions are already compliant. Otherwise, they won't even have that as a alternative.
Like, exactly. And I think we always say that the agents should go close to where the action is. To me, also, what is the ground truth? It's where the operation and action where it comes from, right? You can't define the ground truth through bureaucracy. That's not how you should be doing it. You should be looking at, okay, where does this customer, what the customer says, this is true. We take it from there, right?
Exactly.
So exactly. So basically, what we always say, that agents need to be deployed where the actions are, right? And when actions happen, the same goes for ground truth. It needs to come from where the actions happen, where the customer is, and you basically say, this is the ground truth, this is the actual source of truth, and that's it. And don't bring bureaucracy into that discussion. Nobody cares what the CRM thinks or the ERP thinks, right? There's one truth in the world. You can't have multiple alternative facts, right? There is one fact, and that fact your company should know and decide on, and then basically everything else follows. And if you put that and that data flow together, that's where you see that everything comes together, and deploying agents becomes something that gets close to action. You can deal with them. You don't really have to deal with the giant workflows that are basically forced on you because of your systems, and you will have to get super complicated agents. The agents become much more simpler. The AI models become much more simpler and action focused and can do things. But also the frequency of actions that needs to happen becomes much higher, and then you can get a better clock speed.
Yeah, I think that's a right point, because rather than arguing whether ERP has the best information or which CRM has the latest information, I think all those things can be rendered moot and say, okay, listen, this is the last transaction that we have with the customer here, and your data fabric or data flow already captures that. So whatever next best action happens, irrespective of whether it happens in an ERP or it's a CRM, whether it happens in supply chain or sales or marketing, you take that as the reference. So I think the history is already taken, is already part of your conversation. It can't be anything else, because no system has its own truth. There is only one truth. And I think if you build agents from that perspective, the agents would be cognitive about what has happened in the history. You can actually deliver, you can actually sketch the experience for the customer in a much better way. Okay, this customer has actually previously complained about this, so maybe we do not share that as an option in the next conversation. I think one of the things that really frustrates me is, right now I'm having one of the discussions with one of the furniture manufacturers, incidentally. And I basically, we had a whole discussion whether it was a manufacturing defect or whether it was a return. And after almost 15 days of discussion, they again send me a receipt which says it's a return, and they're charging money for it. I'm like, but we just agreed, we just discussed. I mean, it's in your notes. So every time we go there, they go through the notes and they say, yeah, we did that. We have agreed that it's a manufacturing defect, so there should not be any charge. But every time they send me an invoice, they put that charge on me. Like, crazy what? I think those things cannot happen if you don't have disconnected systems. If you have a data flow as the basis, as a first class citizen, or the most in every factor, and then you build functions around that.
Yeah, you just reminded me of a similar experience I had with a shipping company. So I ordered some electronics, and then they basically arrived at my house soaking wet. Like, basically, I don't know. They were just cooking them in water or something. So they're obviously broken. I took a picture of the box that was basically disintegrating because of all the water. Sent it to the company that sent it to me. They said it's a shipping company problem. All right, what do I do? They booked a pickup, and they said, like, okay, pack it nicely so they can bring it to us. Then we refund you. I packed it, sent it back. The shipping company came, picked it up, and went away. A week after, nothing happened. So I called that company and so, like, okay, what's happening? And then so, like, well, we haven't got it from the shipping company yet. And okay, what do I do? It's like, we're gonna check, but you could check them yourself. So I called the shipping company, and the person says, like, yeah, it's actually set to arrive tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I wait, and then 2 days later, they bring the same package to me again, saying, like, here's yours. It's nicely packaged. It's like, what are you talking about? It's the same package. It's supposed to go somewhere else. So they returned my return to my. And then I was like, what's happening here? And then I basically got angry. Then they had to the e-commerce service. They had to send me a different packaging order with a different shipping company. So I had to send it in a different route. And then they had to basically give me the refund. But this is like, it literally had 2 weeks of pulling hair to figure out what's going on, because nobody knew what's going on. And then the whole data flow was broken. And at the end of the day, instead of returning the broken package to the actual vendor, they brought it back to me saying, like, here's it is with a new box. It was like, That's what I needed. It's inside the box that's broken because of the water. Box doesn't matter, right? So paper doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think at this point, also like to urge the audience to also share some of their funny experience. Of course, it's funny in retrospective. It's not funny when you are going through it, as all of us know. And what do you think is the impact on customer experience, your experience when you go through this? And what do you think the company could have done differently? You know, that would be something great to get from. I'm sure all of us have that funny experience.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is integrated data flows has been one of the key aspects of at least know what's going on, know about this customer, right? The shipping company could have actually collected that information that I've complained that you delivered things soaking wet and it's electronics. So the context was missing. So what they did was they basically sent it back, put it in a different box, and sent it back to me. Instead of like, okay, this is obviously broken. There was no intelligence connected to that, but then the broad data flow between the shipping company and the actual provider of that product that I bought it from was completely broken too. Right? So their data flow was them calling each other. And this is something like Amazon does really well by basically say, like, you can only ship for us if you open up your data flows to us. So we know what's going on with you.
I think this is a great point. So
Right.
why do we really need the systems to send messages when it could be much easier to just share the data in a very kind of a practical and governed way, which can, and then let the systems work on that single source and make intelligent decisions. So really, what if you think about it, we don't really need the bureaucracy. What we need is good data to base actions on. We need good decision models to take good decisions, and then we need a good execution. I think this is what BizOps is in the end. It just enables that. Maybe it's that simple.
Exactly. And I'm to give you a counter example, and that's where I think, because I've been always saying that Amazon have their own version of BizOps here. So the counter example of that, I did the exact same thing 2 weeks ago. I bought something from Amazon. It came to my house broken. I didn't have to deal with any shipping company. That's the different experience, right? I created a return order. It get picked up. I can follow it through customer service of Amazon. I called them, was like, what's going on? And they were like, oh, we can see that your return is here, and we will get it tomorrow. So I did not know. The answer I got was in seconds. Compared to going around, people just, can you hold on? I need to call some other company and so on. And the difference in experience and the speed of delivery of value is so obvious when you start to think in specific operations. And that's, I think, what, as you said, that's where BizOps comes in.
Yeah, I think it's a great example just to contradict the two completely different way of handling pretty much the same issue. So I think now let's just start wrapping up. I think we started with Klarna and their bold decisions to discontinue with Salesforce and Workday. We looked at basically what could be the drivers, so cost and efficiencies, getting a closed loop of the operations and focusing on the core capabilities. I think we discussed that not every company would have the capability or the courage to do that. And I think you also mentioned that applications have been the focus of attention for a very long time. And now I think it's time for us to start really putting data fabric and the data flow into the focus as the primary entities, and then build microservices, build functionalities on top of it. And I think that with examples that you've shared, it becomes very clear why we need to do that. The Amazon example versus this XYZ retailer. And I think we also can see that, okay, BizOps could be that methodology by it allows you to integrate data, insights, decisions, and actions together into a single package and deploy that on the data flow. So rather than you hauling the data all the way from where it is to some central system and then using the messaging service and complicating stuff, you can simply deploy your logic onto the data that you already have. So your closed loop is guaranteed, your adaptability is guaranteed, your compliance is guaranteed. You can deliver much better, greater experience to your customers. And I think you can also have the feedback loop like you want. I think it kind of ticks all the boxes in my view. How would you like to summarize, Ali?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that for me, the key is that with BizOps, you can really integrate things together and integrate the experiences together, not only the actions, but the experiences together. Because you see the flows of data coming together, you see the flows of actions coming together. Microservices in general are very technical terms. But BizOps creates an analogy inside the business to follow same structures and same architectures in your business architecture rather than your technical architecture only. And that enables you to have very decomposable and easy to use operations and easy to adapt operations. And that creates that flow as well. So that is how I see it. I think right now many companies are building their own versions of it, but that's only the ones that have huge amounts of budget to deal with that or capabilities to deal with that. Whereas not everyone can do that. And that's why we basically have been looking into doing these kind of things and building a platform that enables BizOps.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a good summary. So what can the audience expect in the next episode? Like to share some light?
Yeah, so there's a term we used a lot called next best action. We'll break that down a bit. What does it mean? How does it connect to the agents? How should you think about it? But also we talk about a bit about your last mile operations and what does that mean. So
Great.
more of that to come. We're talking to some really interesting guests to come over as well, but that's in the future.
Great. Good. I think that's a great summary, and see you in the next episode next time, and continue this conversation on BizOps.
Yes. Thank you for listening. See you next time.